How's it going, you guys? So in this video, I wanted to read some comments from these anti-keto people who apparently have no idea that your body can actually convert body fat into fuel. I'm going to be reading comments off of Dr. Mike's recent video where he claims ketosis is a myth. Okay, you'll notice a common theme all these people have in common. Essentially, they don't know how your body produces ketones. They don't understand beta oxidation, and apparently they think you can't live without eating carbohydrates for a couple hours, I guess, because how are you going to live without? How are you going to live fasted 30 days if your body cannot convert body fat into ketones? I don't know, I guess they think you're just going to die or something, but let's read the comments and you'll understand. So the original comment thread is, "This is going to trigger so many people, I can't wait to read the comments," which is funny, I guess. And then some weird guy named Shu Fu says, "Except dietary zealots tend to be averse to actual experts and instead gobble up nonsense from those who masquerade as experts. You'll see more hilarious comments from medical doctors or engineers, live action role playing." So I replied to this guy Shu Fu. I just replied to a bunch of these people who think that they're so like high and mighty when they clearly just, I guess they just watch videos of like Dr. Mike and just assume everything he says is true. I don't think any of these people are actual scientists or they're into science or anything like that. I mean, I would hope not. Anyway, so I just replied to a bunch of these people with links to Dr. Jeff Volek explaining ketogenic metabolism and their implications for benefiting sports performance, which if these people understood ketosis and how it works, they'd probably understand, at least for endurance athletes, and really for people who, just want an advantage in life in general. They'd understand why it's so beneficial, but just to stir the pot. So I said, Dr. Mike got it wrong on this one, sent the link. And this guy, Shufu, he says, "Got what wrong? Volek and Finney's studies are very weak, small, cherry-picked samples and riddled with bias. But sure, let's hear why you think Mike is wrong. Louise Burke studies routinely refute any of Volek and Finney's claims. Even though Louise Burke, her studies are usually no longer than 7 days in length. Like the most commonly cited study, I believe it was by her, was competitive race walkers, and it was like a 4-day study or something, which is not long enough for ketogenic metabolism to even. It literally just begins. You start breaking down body fat into ketones in the first 4 days or so, but your body doesn't actually start to efficiently utilize those ketones as energy for different systems in the body until about 4 weeks or more. And these people, I don't know if they just don't want to believe it or they just can't wrap their head around it for some reason. They want to think keto adaptation should happen in, right away for some reason, but it doesn't. That's why so many people feel like crap the first 1 to 2 weeks, and sports performance sucks until after about the 3 to 4 week mark, depending on the person, obviously. For me, I just experienced insane gains right away. So, and I just repeat the same thing over and over again, and I guess they don't read my comments, it seems. So this is factually incorrect from a fat oxidation standpoint. Within the context of weight loss, you may not lose significantly more weight with calories equated. But when keto adapted, your metabolism does, in fact, switch to oxidizing more body fat for energy. And the longer subjects stay strict to ketogenic macros, the greater percentage of body fat they oxidize for energy over time. Also, it's been found in much longer studies by Finney et al., Stephen Finney, that keto-adapted trained athletes can actually oxidize fat to fuel performance at intensities of up to 90% of VO2 max or greater. I'll link the 2 primary studies, a few extra, and when I have time, a lecture summarizing the research on fat-adapted performance that discusses the literature on fat oxidation keto compared to regular diets. I'll link one more in CrossFitters to study this, one on elite level keto endurance athletes, yada yada. And now here comes the nonsense. And a bunch of people are just agreeing with each other about how stupid keto is. And it's just like, why would I expect mature dialogue to come in a forum full of immaturity? But I guess it happens in all communities, obviously. You know, in keto, you see all this talk about vegans and whatnot. But so then the guy's like, what did Mike say that was incorrect? You posted a study showing that eating more fat results in more fat oxidation, and not that it results in more fat loss than isocaloric comparison. Okay, so right here shows me that he didn't actually thoroughly read the study, and I think he should if he's going to be trying to debunk it. So the study so I linked to multiple studies, but I think that they're talking about the FASTER study, fat adapted and elite endurance marathon athletes. And so he's saying that the study was showing eating more fat results in more fat oxidation, but this is the mistake he's making now. And he's going to make over and over again in this conversation. This is the exact mistake that Dr. Mike made that I highlighted in my video. And if you haven't seen that one, go check it out because it sets a tone for this entire thing. And I'm only talking about this and making a video about random internet comment strangers and only discussing this because it's a fundamental mistake that PhD level scientists, exercise physiologists and whatnot make over and over again, is that they don't understand beta oxidation before they talk about it. Or, I mean, they understand beta oxidation from a weight loss or a fat loss standpoint, but not from a ketogenic metabolism standpoint. And this is easily debunked if they just read a basic review of the literature. So, I did not post a study that eating more fat results in fat oxidation. I posted a study on elite level endurance athletes, keto adapted for a long duration compared to carb adapted. And what it showed is the keto adapted elite athletes, they were oxidizing body fat, a greater percentage of body fat directly as fuel versus the high carb group. But this guy is looking at it through the lens of whatever he wants to see, and he's saying that they were eating more fat, therefore oxidizing more fat. No, they were burning body fat directly, also known as beta oxidation. And mind you, beta oxidation is simply converting fat molecules into energy, but just like within the context of weight loss, when you restrict calories, you'll be beta oxidizing adipose tissue, although you won't be fully adapted to using that as energy, which is why people feel like garbage on a low calorie diet when they're eating higher amounts of carbs usually. But on a ketogenic metabolism, the majority of that beta oxidation is adipose tissue. It is not dietary fat. But you can convert dietary fat into fuel, like MCTs and whatnot, but it depends on the chain length and the type of fat, obviously. But the majority of the energy on a ketogenic diet is going to come from adipose tissue, which, beta oxidation. All right, let's see, where were we? So, it's not eating more fat that results in more fat oxidation. It's the restriction of carbohydrates, and now your body has to break down body fat to prevent itself from dying. So that's what happens when you go on long fasts. 30-day fasts, people don't die. They don't eat any fat at all. They're fasting, but they're actually breaking down body fat into ketones. That's what happens when you're energy restricted. So the fact that weight loss experts and people commenting on videos about weight loss don't even understand, the process of breaking down body fat into fuel when energy is restricted is just crazy. So now the guy proceeds to just, toot his own horn. Keto propaganda is very silly. It isn't better than any other diet, and is in fact worse for performance. See any Louise Burke study. Basically any of her studies that are done less than 7 days when you're not even keto adapted yet, and they don't supplement sodium, but yeah, sure, because it fits your bias, right? Right, because I'm not the only one who apparently has a bias. Apparently he doesn't have a bias. Apparently he's correct, and I'm wrong just because, right? Just because, even though I'm the only one who actually cited actual references so far. See any Louise Burke study. So any Louise Burke study, any of these studies that fit my bias. But keto increases perceived rate of exertion. Keto is worse for retention of fat-free mass. If you understand, so these are not fad diet books, just so you guys know. These are essentially extremely in-depth reviews and summaries of Dr. Finney and Dr. Volek's research. And this one in particular talks about all of the mechanisms involved in the muscle sparing effects of ketosis. These are medical books, and they're not going to be understood by the average person. They're not fad diet books. You won't understand them unless you have a background in science. But yeah, and even Dr. Mike in his video admitted that you have about the same retention of muscle mass, and we're talking hypocaloric, okay, on keto versus high carb. So I don't know what, like, this guy is just, he just wants to believe that keto kills you, apparently. It's worse for inducing hypertrophy among non-newbie status subjects when compared to higher carb, energy, and protein equated diets, likely due to the reduced carbohydrate oxidation, which impairs the ATP phosphocreatine regeneration, which affects the release and resequester of calcium cyclically in the sarcoplasmic reticulum, which highly affects performance of those fibers. Keto is like running against the wind. Sure, you can do it, but why? So all of these things you just mentioned are coming from studies done on subjects on either low carb diets, which are not actually keto, or keto diets, and they're usually only done within the context of 2 weeks or less, generally. 3 weeks at the most, these people will do these studies. All of these negative effects on performance and health and everything, they only happen during the phase in which your metabolism is shifting over from burning exogenous sources of energy, fucking carbohydrate, to oxidizing endogenous body fat for fuel. And this is the huge thing, like, whoa, where they're like, just, whoa, like they're like, it's a mirage in the sand. Like, their brain is foggy. They don't understand ketogenic metabolism. It's the only reason why I'm making this video, is because, like, this is well documented, and I just can't fathom how even people like Mike Israetel, who has a PhD in exercise physiology, he doesn't know, he's not familiar with how ketones are produced. This is crazy. And now his followers are just kind of reflecting that. So I just replied, in this video, so here's my reply. In this video, Mike continuously claims on keto, you don't burn more body fat than high carb diets. He even says specifically, Keto doesn't shift your metabolism into a special state of burning fat for energy. It does not, according to Dr. Mike. In fact, the title of this video is implying keto burning more fat is a myth. The problem here is, by definition, ketosis is a metabolic state of oxidizing adipose tissue, that's body fat, into ketones, either through fasting, right, where you're not eating any exogenous fat or carbs at all. Whoa, are you just going to die? Right? Because apparently you need to eat exogenous fat to create ketones, or exogenous carbs to create glucose. Because if you can't create ketones from body fat, well, you're probably going to die. Because how's your brain being fueled? So either through fasting or carb restriction, you deplete the liver of glycogen. Your body then responds by breaking down body fat and converting it into ketones to supply that missing energy demand. Eventually, after months of this, your body begins and actually it's probably more like 4 to 12 weeks. Your body begins converting glycerol and free fatty acids to refill muscle glycogen as well. The studies I linked not only show the muscle glycogen refilling effects, but specifically that a far greater percentage of energy was coming directly from beta oxidation. Translation: the keto-adapted athletes were burning far greater fat as fuel, body fat. This doesn't mean they are losing more weight. There's a huge difference between losing more weight and burning more fat, beta oxidation. Eating more butter doesn't put you into ketosis. Removing carbs do. And your body fulfills lactic glycogen by increasing beta oxidation. And right here, I'm not specifying from adipose tissue, but I've already said that over and over again, so you should know that by now. If you eat a shit ton of butter, even in a keto-adapted state, you will obviously still store those calories as body fat, but you are by definition burning more body fat as energy. I think Dr. Mark's, wait, did I say Mark? I meant Mike. I think Dr. Mike's intended point seems to be keto diets don't cause greater weight loss outside of caloric restriction. But he keeps saying keto doesn't burn more fat, and that's factually incorrect. And to answer your question on sports performance, because your body can oxidize body fat directly as energy, when keto adapted, you can exercise for far longer without a need for exogenous fueling sources like carbs. This is why so many elite endurance athletes, such as the ones in the first study I linked originally, have success with keto. Also, as mentioned before, beta oxidation can supply energy at up to 90% of VO2 max, according to some of Finney's studies, which is likely higher than a lot of the Muay Thai training I've done in my 2 years keto adapted. Most, like hitting pads, doing bag work, and even sparring, you don't really hit over 90% of your VO2 max, and then whatever you do, there's enough glycogen in a keto adapted state to provide that. Most of the studies claiming keto impairs performance are too short. Don't equate protein and or don't supplement sodium, which is extremely important in ketogenic subjects and is a prime reason people feel like crap when trying the diet. They end up hyponatremic because they don't supplement. And now, here we go again with just like, I guess he doesn't read my comments, and that's fine because, I don't know. So now the guy replies, Mike wasn't wrong about anything. He said caloric balance determines body fat loss. Being keto doesn't circumvent this reality in any mythical manner, no matter how much fat oxidation is increased. You left a lot of nuance out of your supporting statements. Any particular reason you neglected to mention amino acids' role to replete glycogen? Or how the increased fat oxidation reduces carbohydrate oxidation? Effects of the diet cause physiological insulin resistance to spare glucose for the brain and red blood cells. Muscle glycogen repletes because it can barely be accessed. So your muscles basically just die. You basically are, if you could not access muscle glycogen, you probably would function similarly to somebody with Lou Gehrig's disease, ALS. You need muscle glycogen no matter what you're adapted to, or if you're fasting for 30 days, or else you're probably not going to be able to walk, okay? Muscle glycogen is not just for contracting during resistance exercise or something. So I don't know why this guy thinks that you just can't access muscle glycogen in a keto adapted state, which it kind of just shows that he doesn't understand how muscle glycogen works, I guess. The impairment of carbohydrate oxidation keeps glycogen in the muscle, since you're using mostly fat for energy. Fat oxidation is the highlight of the diet, but let's pretend that doesn't adversely affect muscle function. Okay, so he's saying fat oxidation is a highlight of the diet, and that apparently fat oxidation substitutes the lack of glycogen. So your muscles are burning fat instead of glycogen now, is I think what he's implying. So he's literally implying that your body is, I guess, shifting to burning fat instead of carbohydrate for muscle purposes. So your body is burning a greater percentage of fat as fuel. So that's exactly my point. Only he thinks that it's from butter and exogenous sources, which it's not. So he's admitting that keto is shifting your metabolism towards burning more fat, but at the same time trying to debunk it. These people, it's like they're just arguing to fucking argue. And he clearly hasn't even read how ketones are produced. And mind you, ketones are produced in a caloric restricted state. Ketones are produced even if you're adapted to carbohydrate metabolism after vigorous exercise. You deplete the glycogen after you burn through a certain amount of calories of carbohydrate in the liver, depending on how much you have stored, even if you're carb adapted. And then if you don't immediately refill with carbohydrates post-exercise, your body will start to produce ketones from body fat. It doesn't mean you're keto adapted. It doesn't mean that you're efficiently utilizing those ketones for energy, but you're breaking down body fat post-exercise. So, but he thinks that ketones are produced from exogenous sources. No, when anything that depletes the liver of glycogen all the way is going to trigger burning more body fat to create ketones. Everyone should know this if they go through college and understand physiology, unless I don't know. But this is the fact that these people don't know how ketones are produced from body fat, regardless of whether they believe in carb adapted metabolism or not. Doesn't matter what you advocate. Dr. Mike, at the very least, should know this. Creating a video saying that this process is a myth is just foolish. The impairment of carbohydrate oxidation keeps glycogen in the muscles, since you're using mostly fat for energy. Fat oxidation is a highlight of the diet. So burning more fat as fuel is the highlight of the diet, he says. Burning more body fat, oxidizing body fat for fuel, oxidizing fat in general for fuel is a highlight of the diet. But let's pretend that doesn't adversely affect muscle function. Why the fuck are you still arguing about whether keto burns more fat or not? You just admitted that it does, but whatever. Most high-intensity athletes would benefit from being able to access and utilize and supercompensate the stored energy in the muscle, which is optimized on a high carbohydrate oxidized context from the carb-adapted GASP high-carb diet. Obviously, it would be pretty fucked up for these people who think that they have to bulk and cut. They have to go through months of bulking, eating all these excess calories, and months of cutting in order to gain muscle during the bulking phase and gain a bunch of fat, and then yo-yo back and forth between caloric restriction, caloric excess. It would be a horrible, threat to their, years of getting fat and then cutting down to, and feeling like garbage, with their caloric restriction and their high-carb diet. It would be a huge threat to those years of hard work and carb and the high-carb paradigm, for them to have to admit that your body can actually produce glycogen internally, endogenously. To have to admit that your body can actually directly convert body fat into both ketones and glucose and glycogen internally. It would just ruin all of these if it fits your macros people's businesses. Jillian Michaels, going all crazy, freaking out about keto, saying it's horrible and will rot your brain. Mike Dolce going on these long rants about keto, and he doesn't even understand the basics of it. Dr. Mike at least was trying to be balanced, but still not understanding, ketogenic metabolism, claiming your body doesn't shift its metabolism towards burning more body fat for fuel, even though that's how ketones are produced. All of these people, their businesses would be threatened by the fact of physiology that your body can, in fact, produce body fat, or produce energy, both glycogen and ketones, from body fat. So this guy, thinks you have to eat more butter to produce ketones, and that's how you produce that energy. And he thinks that your body just can't access glycogen all of a sudden. And a lot of these people think that these people, and I guess this guy thinks this too, these people all think that you just don't produce glucose on a keto diet, other than from catabolizing muscle tissue. This does not work. Scientifically. Oh my God, this is not logical. The keto diet sucks. So he's continuing. The keto diet sucks for retention or growth of fat-free mass for many reasons. Gluconeogenesis, amino acid oxidation, decreased carbohydrate oxidation, reducing adenosine triphosphate phosphocreatine, regeneration, limiting muscle contraction, intensity, and volume. Keto for non-noobs, gimps, gains. The zealots like to highlight the potential positives and ignore the potential consequences. Increasing perception of exertion when training. Muscle loss, bone loss, fucking bone loss. Decreased thyroid output. Decreased insulin signaling, which decreases glutathione synthesis, which increases methylglyoxal. Increased cortisol for gluconeogenesis, which often causes sleep impairment, if you believe sleep is important. A lot of people actually experience lifetime insomnia going away on keto, including myself, due to the upregulation and converting glutamate into GABA. And that cortisol thing, generally, it's in studies, it's only been shown within the first 1 to 2 weeks. Again, drawing from his short-term studies that can't actually show true keto adaptation. And there was a meta-analysis or review from Tim Noakes in 2018 where it basically showed this cortisol myth only comes when you're calorically restricted. And I guess this guy who believes so strongly in caloric restriction is kind of just missing the fact that any diet where you either spontaneously or purposely restrict calories to a certain degree for a long period of time is likely to result in downregulation of thyroid hormone and also increased cortisol. I mean, caloric restriction, especially if you're not eating enough protein. So I think this is another thing, is that a lot of these keto people are under eating protein, and a lot of keto gurus preach low protein, which is going to cause all of these things he's talking about. So this is probably another thing. So this guy, he's just, oh no, keto is bad and all these things happen on keto, period. But he doesn't understand this all depends on what variables are involved in the study. If they're under eating protein, like most keto diet, this is probably one of those studies where they do like 90-something% fat. So if you're under eating protein on any diet, but especially on keto, you're going to see greater catabolism of muscle tissue. And obviously you're also going to see so you're going to see more catabolism of muscle tissue, which is probably going to upregulate cortisol, because cortisol is involved in breaking down that muscle tissue to produce glycogen from amino acids. And the thyroid output, maybe that's related, but I mean, a lot of people do talk about, hormone issues on keto. I'm not going to disagree with that. But this all depends on the context. And also, Stephen Finney and Jeff Volok on Verta Health blog actually released a gigantic review article talking about sodium and its relationship to cortisol. But these people don't give a shit about if they're accurate or not. All they care about is supporting their fucking paradigm, their bias, so that they can keep eating Cocoa Puffs and fitting their macros thinking it's healthy. One of the benefits of the diet is that it helps some people spontaneously reduce hunger and thus calories. Yes, that's because past a certain point of time, your body starts to directly consume calories from adipose tissue. That's how ketones are produced. And that's why their hunger goes away, because their calories are being supplied through body fat, through endogenous fuel sources. Let's acknowledge it for what it is and not pretend it's magical or good for high-level or weekend warrior athletes with intensity or hypertrophy demands. Keto fails, and guys, have you seen my vlogs? Have you seen my Muay Thai competition? And also that Sylvie Von Itu or whatever on YouTube, who has been competing in Muay Thai, doing alternate day fasting on keto for like 3 years now at the highest level in Thailand. She's a Westerner. She should be getting her ass kicked. And she's won 8 out of 9 of her fights on alternate day fasting with keto. None of the shit this guy's saying is true. Keto fails in comparison, even when energy and nitrogen protein are equated. Read the Louise Burke papers, critical of your beloved Volek and Finney. Look, it's not that I worship Finney and Volek or something. I am a huge fan, though. It's not a bias thing. It's that there are reasons why Louise Burke studies are not applicable. And you're not allowing yourself, you're not willing to accept this. Because if you did, then everything you know about nutrition would go down the window. This is always what happens. Like, this is exactly how scientists and civilians reacted when the scientific discovery that the Earth was not flat was created. When people thought the Earth was flat, they acted like this guy. Because everything they had to know to accept, everything that they knew would be a lie if they had to accept that the world is round. So this guy, But I'm the one with cognitive bias, apparently. Louise Burke's papers. Yeah, so read Louise Burke's papers, even though I have. Critical of your beloved Volek and Finney. So yeah, the papers where over 90% of the energy demands are being met with fat. They're under-eating protein. He's claiming his nitrogen is equated, but that's because I guess I don't know. What's up with that? And it's only like a 7-week study. Okay? Compared to Finney and Volek, their studies are 4 to like 18 months, depending on which one we're talking about here. But more importantly, in real-world scenarios, the diet induces a dramatic negative energy balance, which is not favorable in this context. So that I agree with. That's like the one accurate thing he says. And that's the one reason why carbs might actually have a role, is if you're under-eating and experiencing performance deficits due to the potential that, for whatever reason, your body's not converting body fat, adipose tissue, to refill glycogen and ketones at a rate in which it can sustain performance. And usually, again, the longer you're keto adapted, the more efficient you become at that. For me, after about 2 months, I find that I can fast for 21 hours as long as I've done it, and train 3 times, doing sparring, heavy bag, and weightlifting, Olympic weightlifting, doing clean and jerks for reps, like a dumb CrossFit athlete who's going to get injured, during a 21-hour fast. Okay? But apparently that's a myth. Okay? For the obese, perhaps keto's okay. Mike was charitable enough to suggest the diet is fine in the short term to assist in weight loss. To assist in a weight loss journey for those who want to achieve a better mood on other diets. Unfortunately, it is not better in achieving the goal of fat loss than any other caloric restriction diet. Okay, you are oxidizing body fat as fuel directly on keto. Over and over again, I say this, but these people, it's like no, like it doesn't happen. They just can't they can't get it through. And fat loss, burning body fat as fuel, is not the same as weight loss, because if you eat those calories back as butter or whatever, you're going to sustain the same body weight, but you're still oxidizing more body fat for fuel. That's the whole fucking point. There's no way to refute this. According to him. So what he means by there's no way to refute this is that there's no way to convince him that what he's saying is wrong. Now, obviously, discussing information and giving him information that contradicts his statement and discussing why he's wrong, sure, I could do that, but I can't convince him because his mind is made up. There's no way to refute this. It's the negative energy balance that results in fat loss. No, it's the negative energy balance that results in weight loss. And I'm not even going into the potential weight loss benefits in an unrestricted keto diet versus high carb diet, regardless of how much fat oxidation occurs. So this is hilarious. It's the negative energy balance that results in fat loss, regardless of how much body fat oxidation occurs. So this guy is just like completely like contradicting himself here. Eating more fat causes more fat oxidation. Cool. No. Eating more fat does not create more fat oxidation. Restricting carbohydrates to the point where liver glycogen is depleted. In fact, just pure straight up, depleting liver glycogen through any means creates more body fat oxidation. That's how ketones are produced. Please study science beyond your bias, beyond just what your gurus tell you. Guy's crazy. Alright, so here's my reply. Long paragraph written, while missing the point entirely. Mike specifically said, keto doesn't shift your metabolism towards burning more fat. In this video, but the fact is, you do burn a greater percentage of energy from body fat on a ketogenic metabolism. And also exogenous fat, okay? But you're burning more fat either way. That was my point. If you eat a caloric surplus on keto, of course you'll store those extra calories as fat and gain weight. But Mike claims over and over again in this video that keto doesn't burn more fat or shift the metabolism towards burning more fat, when in fact, by definition, you are oxidizing a significantly greater percentage of energy from adipose tissue. Furthermore, due to your mistake in the very last sentence of your long reply, I must repeat, eating more fat is not what triggers the upregulation of beta oxidation to create ketones. It's the restriction of carbohydrate. And the reason I didn't emphasize amino acids as a major source of glucose and gluconeogenesis is because the body doesn't typically catabolize muscle tissue into glucotic amino acids like alanine unless you're restricting protein, as many keto gurus advise, unfortunately. And as Louise Burke's studies, I think that he's referring to, but he hasn't referenced a study yet, I think that those people were restricting protein, and that's why they were experiencing decreases in lean mass. Duh, if you restrict protein, you're going to see that. But he's just assuming that protein was equated. Or in a fasted or starvation state. So sarcopenia, also a state where you catabolize muscle tissue into glucose. But if you eat enough protein on a ketogenic diet, the majority of the glucose demand after 6 to 12 weeks seems to come primarily from glycerol and free fatty acids. Now notice how I'm not talking in absolutes. I'm saying seems to, because I'm talking about evidence, not proof and facts, because that's not what science is about. But this guy is just like stubborn and dogmatic and just not scientific. It's funny that you actually believe keto shuts off the body's ability to access glycogen. Not sure how I've been competing in jiu-jitsu, Muay Thai, and making gains on all of my lifts the last 2 years. And I haven't competed in jiu-jitsu yet, but I am going to. I've been training. But the last 2 years I've been keto, I've been doing all of this stuff. And somehow I haven't died of not being able to access glycogen. Not to mention numerous other athletes, like Sylvie. I'm pretty sure muscles would not be able to function hardly at all if their glycogen storage could not be accessed. But then again, Finney has shown beta oxidation can fuel intensities over 90% of VO2 max. So maybe that's why I haven't died of, not being able to move my arms because I can't access glycogen. And if you can link me a study from Burke that was done longer than 3 weeks, and preferably with sodium supplemented, then your argument will have more weight. The problem is most of the beneficial adaptation from keto on athletic performance takes multiple weeks, and some apparently can take months. Volek studies, like the 2 I linked you, were at least 4-week studies, which is why you see some of the benefits I mentioned in those studies, but you don't see those in the short-term studies that you are following. Where I said, you don't see those in the short-term studies that Pop-Tart, if it fits your macros, people like to rely on. Seriously, this guy thinks, oh no, Volek and Finney, their studies are cherry-picked. Louise Burke debunked him. No, it's just that Louise Burke, their studies are too short to see those adaptations. Volek and Finney have been studying this for decades, and they have over 400 different peer-reviewed papers together on the subject. So they already know that it takes that long. That's why they have different results. But these people don't want to believe it because they're the ones who are suffering from cognitive dissonance, unfortunately. All right, so Shufu replies, no, he said keto doesn't burn more body fat. He acknowledged that eating more fat results in more fat oxidation. How many times do I have to repeat that it's not eating more fat, and it's better, and it's from adipose tissue? How do I oh my God. You're conflating fat oxidation with fat loss. Keto doesn't eliminate access to muscle glycogen. The fuck? You just said that it does. But he realizes that he fucked up. So now he's like trying to backtrack. Keto doesn't eliminate access to muscle glycogen. So keto does not eliminate access to muscle glycogen all of a sudden. But it dramatically reduces carbohydrate oxidation. So it can't burn carbohydrates anymore, which limits the rate of carbohydrates being utilized for energy. So actually so it'll downregulate carbohydrate oxidation only to the extent that it can upregulate fat oxidation based on the intensity of exercise that's being fueled from fat. But I'll have to make another separate video on that. The premise of the diet relies on increasing the rate of fat oxidation at the expense. The premise of the diet relies on increasing fat oxidation at the expense of carb oxidation. So the premise of the diet relies on increasing the rate of burning fat at the expense of burning carbs, is what he's saying here. So basically he's admitting keto upregulates the burning of fat. And what is the title of this video? Nutrition Myths by Dr. Mike. Keto doesn't burn more fat. That's the whole point of his video. Keto doesn't burn more fat. And he specifically says, keto does not shift your metabolism towards burning more fat. But now this guy is even admitting Dr. Mike is wrong. But his cognitive dissonance is preventing him from realizing that he's admitting that I'm right. The premise of the diet relies on increasing the rate of fat oxidation. Oxidation means burning fat. At the expense of carb oxidation due to the energy substrate composition of the diet and the body's requirements of glucose. Keto necessarily spares carb oxidation. That's why ketosis occurs. So keto spares carb oxidation. That's why ketosis occurs, because carb oxidation is downgraded. No, that's not why. Ketosis occurs not because carb burning is being spared. Ketosis occurs because the body is depleted of carbohydrate substrates, and now it has to produce that from adipose tissue and the ketones. Ketosis occurs because carb oxidation is downgraded, so we compensate by burning this other substrate. I mean, and yeah, I guess. Exactly. So you're burning more fat now. You can't be both body fat. You can't be both fat adapted and carb adapted. You can't be very good. High rate of oxidation at one or the other. You can and do burn both substrates. More so when eating both carbs and fats and being efficient at exercise. That's wrong. Actually, when you're eating low carb, your body's going to burn more body fat and less carb. When you're eating high carb, your body's going to be burning more carb and less body fat. Unless you're in a caloric deficit, basically starving yourself, and you're exercising vigorously. Then you can burn more body fat, but you're going to feel like garbage because you can't actually absorb those ketones efficiently. But the rate of oxidation depends on what you're most adapted to using. By fat adapting, you're necessarily reducing access to glycogen. Fat adaptation does see. So you're reducing. Maybe you're reducing the oxidation of glycogen, but at the expense of increasing the access to oxidizing body fat at a greater intensity of exercise. Oh man, this guy isn't thinking about what he's saying. Fat adaptation doesn't mean adenosine triphosphate phosphocreatine cannot regenerate using fatty acids, but it does so at a much slower rate. So you might be right about that one, and that might actually be a deficit for keto performance. This allows for long endurance activity to be sustainable on a fat adapted context. Abundance of stored fatty acids to be mobilized for energy. But when muscles need to contract intensely for mechanical tension volume to induce hypertrophy response, adenosine triphosphate phosphocreatine regeneration needs to occur at a more rapid rate for optimal results. People can increase muscle mass on keto, but that is more likely when they are in an untrained or detrained state. Wow. Really? So you're telling me that I was a newbie all this time, and that's why I was able to compete in Muay Thai, and that elite, and all these elite athletes that do it, which you're not aware of, can as well. Newbie gains are a real phenomenon, so it's newbie gains in his mind. He thinks you can't do keto and be an athlete unless you're a newbie, apparently. So somehow being a newbie upregulates the access to glycogen somehow. They have even shown jogging to induce hypertrophy for newbie trainees. Yeah, no kidding, but that has nothing to do with the glycogen access. That's neurological demands. Diet is irrelevant until it isn't. Ooh, that one made a lot of sense. The trope that studies aren't long enough is ridiculous, since by definition, keto adaptation occurs in 5 to 7 days by all measures of ketosis. No. First of all, you don't understand what ketosis is. It's breaking down body fat to create ketones. That process happens in the first week, like he's saying. That's not keto adaptation. Keto adaptation is a step further, where now your body is actually shifting its mitochondria and its machinery over towards absorbing, actually utilizing these ketones and other substrates at a greater efficiency for all these other uses. And this is exactly why Louis Burke studies don't work, but Finney and Volek's do. If you're in nutritional ketosis, you're by definition keto adapted. No. You're creating ketones, but you're not efficiently absorbing them. Okay? You would know that if you studied it. Like first this guy says eating more fat. It's eating more fat that produces ketones. Then this guy says that it's keto that 5 to 7 days is when you start to produce ketones from extra fat, which doesn't make any sense. And that's keto adaptation. There's no adaptations beyond that. It's ridiculous. It's false. And you're just saying this because it fits his paradigm. It keeps him safe. And he's said numerous times that you're oxidizing more fat as fuel on keto. But then he's also saying that you're not burning any more body fat, or you're not burning any more fat as fuel. But he thinks Dr. Mike is just saying in general that there's no upregulation in the burning of fat. Dr. Mike has literally said there's no metabolic shift in which you're burning more fat as energy on keto. But this guy is saying that there is. So this guy didn't even watch Dr. Mike's video, apparently. Your energy needs are being derived from fatty acids and ketones. You don't need 6 months to adapt. No. So you're burning ketones. You're burning more ketones in the first week. But you're not actually absorbing those fatty acids and ketones yet. You don't need 6 months or more to adapt. Obviously, you haven't read the literature. But what you have done is gimped your muscles' ability to perform and increase and increase your perceived rates of exertion as a result. Needing more than 6 months to a year to adapt, and I didn't say 6 months to a year, that's a long ass time, is simply the reduced ability of improving capacity to work for the context in which it has been provided. So he's claiming that any of these studies that Finney has done on elite level endurance athletes, elite level athletes that show that they're able to perform up to their VO2 max, they're able to provide way more, like more body. They're able to oxidize body fat for energy at intensities of up to 90% of your VO2 max. He's saying that has nothing to do with diet, and that's just because they've been training for that long. Please show me why in the fuck are all of these all of the textbooks and all of these experts, all of their information about eating more carbs after exercise and things is based on this idea that you cannot oxidize body fat for fuel. You can't oxidize fat for fuel at intensities greater than like 60%. It's because they're not done on fat-adapted athletes. He's trying to say that it's the training that induces deriving your energy needs at up to 90% of your VO2 max from fat. That's not diet related. This guy's dumb. He's just not thinking. He's not thinking. Let's see. I know the anecdotal difference in muscle crack. Oh, wait, what is he saying? I've done keto, bro. I know the anecdotal difference in muscle contraction intensity. The physiology is what it is. You can't have your keto cake and eat it too. That's a trade-off with any endeavor. So keto gimping gains is a reality. Just because it slows down results doesn't mean improving isn't possible. It's just like running against the wind. Confirmation bias is cool, and cognitive dissonance is uncomfortable. But but this disagreement you have with Mike and Burke and myself doesn't change reality. Be well on your journey. I'm tapping out of this discussion. He's tapping out of this discussion because I think maybe he's starting to wake up. Because he's admitted over and over again that your metabolism does start burning fat as fuel. It shifts. Your metabolism does shift towards burning fat as fuel. Dr. Mike said that that's not the case. So he's saying your body doesn't burn more fat as fuel. It does not. But keto does. He's saying your body does not burn more body fat as fuel on keto. But because you can't access glycogen on keto, you upregulate the burning of fat for fuel. So he's saying it doesn't burn more fat, but it does. And I'm assuming that that's cognitive dissonance of his, and he's contradicting himself and running in circles, and now he's realizing, oh shit, I fucked up and I can't think properly, so therefore I'm quitting the conversation. And honestly, obviously I'm spending way too much time on this myself, but I think it's for a purpose, because this is like flat earth theory. Okay? This guy is literally living in a paradigm of yesteryear. He thinks the earth is flat, and I'm showing him that the earth is round. And he can't get over his past paradigm now. It's like, whoa, no, there's no way. I've been living my life for the last 40 years or whatever, however long he is. I've been living my life this whole time thinking that, you know, you have to eat carbs to survive, and you're changing my bias. Like I'm like showing him that God is not real all of a sudden. And now he's freaking out. But I think a really big problem here is that this guy probably didn't listen to Dr. Mike's video, and I don't know why he's commenting all this, spending all this time on it, but he didn't watch Mike's video apparently, where Mike specifically said that you don't have a metabolism shift. Therefore, he's arguing, spending all his time, and he's just kind of like sounding stupid. Obviously, you can't tell that this guy is dumb unless you actually understand ketosis and watch Mike's video. So here's my reply, and this is the last reply of this entire video. So here's my reply. Ketones are not created from dietary fat. How many times have I said this? They're created from beta oxidation converted from body fat. That's what you got wrong, and what Dr. Mike got wrong as well. You'd know this if you at least did a quick Google search of the literature. Reviews on ketogenic metabolism. Your problem and Dr. Mike's problem is you lack the basic understanding of how ketones are created and how ketosis works. Beta oxidation, the burning of body fat of adipose tissue, is where ketones come from. This happens even in carb adaptation after vigorous exercise because of depleted liver glycogen. Doesn't mean you're keto adapted, it just means you're creating ketones. Keto adaptation is different. It's when your body is actually fully utilizing ketones for various processes, as well as refilling glycerol into glycogen, etc. Don't get mad at your own lack of understanding of the very subject you're trying to debunk. Cognitive dissonance and bias goes both ways. Everyone thinks their view is correct. That's why it's important to have honest discussions. Just because your ideas fit the mainstream narrative does not mean they are complete. It shouldn't be a battle. It should be a sharing of resources, ideas, and understanding. You know, like mature, intelligent adults. So I'm sure that he's going to read that, and even though he's spent all his time trying to debunk a concept he hasn't read up on, probably hasn't even read the video that he's like writing all this shit on. He said he tapped out of this discussion, but it's hurting his ego so bad, it's challenging him so much. I know he's going to reply. Oh my god. And so this is a problem with the human mind, and that's the only reason why I'm making this long ass video, right, on a Sunday morning where I have nothing better to do, I guess. I could create more things to do. Drinking my coffee. And I'm enjoying this. And I'm hoping, hey look, if you've watched this entire video, or even gotten to this point, please leave a comment down below. Let me know that you're actually interested. Because I want to know how many people have actually watched this. This is really me just kind of wrapping my head around this subject too, is like trying to understand, like, why do so many people talk all this shit about keto without ever even reading about it? You know, it's funny because I did all these diets before, and I know the science behind all these diets better than even the very people that are discussing them. Like vegans, for example. I own all the main vegan diet books, science books in particular, done by the PhD researchers that found the science. I understand vegan science better than vegans. Keto science better than keto people, even though I am technically a keto person, I guess. And these people who are supposed to be experts in fat loss and weight loss don't understand the difference between oxidizing adipose tissue for energy and weight loss. There's a huge difference. Anyway, yeah, fuck it. Let me know what you guys got down below. This is a very fun mental exercise for me, so I enjoyed this very much. And yeah, before you make comments to internet strangers on YouTube, make sure you have enough time to do so, and understand that it's cognitive bias both ways. The Earth is not flat, or maybe it is. And read the research first before you make comments. Talk till next time.